The year is 844 AD. On the bustling docks of Al-Ushbuna, modern Lisbon, life followed its usual rhythm under the Umayyad Emirate of Córdoba. But then a terrifying sight appeared, longships with dragon-headed prows gliding up the Tagus River. These were not Mediterranean traders, but Viking raiders, tall, fair-haired men wielding axes and painted shields. Without warning, they stormed ashore, overwhelming the city's defenders, who were unprepared for such a sudden, chaotic assault. For 13 days, Lisbon was ravaged, homes looted, buildings burned, people taken captive. The Vikings vanished as quickly as they came, their ships heavy with plunder. But this was only the beginning. The fleet sailed south, entering the Guadalquivir River and threatening Seville, the jewel of Al-Andalus. News of Lisbon's fall barely reached Emir Abd al-Rahman Sen before the Vikings were at Seville's gates. The defenders, used to land-based threats, were stunned by the Vikings' mobility and unpredictability. The dragon ships had brought a new kind of war to Iberia, one the Emirate was unprepared to face. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the foundations of Al-Andalus. The Vikings' arrival was not just a raid, but a warning. The world was changing. Seville was about to pay the price for underestimating the storm from the north. The Vikings' secret weapon was the longship, a vessel with a shallow draft, able to slip up rivers and strike deep inland. Unlike Mediterranean fleets, Viking ships could bypass coastal defences and appear where no one expected. Their raids were swift and brutal. Land, loot, vanish before a response could be mustered. A fleet of 50 ships could unleash over 2,000 warriors in minutes. The Emirates' armies, trained for sieges and open battles, were helpless against this unpredictable, mobile threat. The Vikings fought for wealth, not territory, using chaos and speed as their greatest weapons. Their tactics, hit and run, decentralized and ferocious, left defenders reeling. For Al-Andalus, this was warfare turned upside down. The Vikings' approach was a force of nature unpredictable, everywhere at once, and devastating. The defenders faced not just a new enemy, but a new kind of war. The old rules no longer applied. When the Vikings reached Seville, the city was unprepared for the horror that followed. The Norsemen established a fortified camp on a river island and launched a week-long rampage. Arabic chroniclers described scenes of terror, indiscriminate slaughter, the burning of the great mosque, and the city stripped of its wealth. For the refined society of Al-Andalus, this was an encounter with what they saw as pure barbarism. The Vikings' lack of rules, no ransoms, no respect for holy sites, was shocking. The psychological impact was profound. The attackers seemed to come from the edge of the known world, speaking an alien tongue and following unknown gods. The clash was not just military, but cultural, a collision of worldviews. The Islamic world, used to familiar foes, now faced an enemy outside all previous experience. The Vikings were an external shock, a reminder that the world was larger and more dangerous than Córdoba's scholars had imagined. The certainties of civilization were shattered by axe and long ship. Seville's fall was a brutal lesson in the limits of knowledge and preparedness. The Emirate now faced a threat it barely understood. The age of comfort was over. To make sense of the Vikings, Andalusi chroniclers called them al-Majus, a term for pagan outsiders. Originally used for Zoroastrians, it became a catch-all for northern barbarians. The label reflected confusion and fear. The Muslims of Al-Andalus couldn't imagine a people without a holy book or structured faith. Some thought the Vikings worshipped fire, or only their swords and plunder. Emir Abd al-Rahman II, seeking answers, sent the poet Al-Ghazal on a diplomatic mission north, an early attempt at cross-cultural intelligence. Reports described a society of chieftains, loyalty, and a religion tied to nature and war. For Córdoba's urban elite, the Viking world was alien, cold, wild, and incomprehensible. Yet this was the start of a slow, sometimes violent process of understanding. Two worlds were beginning to take each other's measure. Despite the violence, the Vikings and the Islamic world were also connected by trade. Arabic silver coins, dirhams, have been found across Scandinavia, evidence of a vast network linking Baghdad to the Baltic. Vikings, known as the Rus in the east, traded furs, amber and slaves for Islamic silver and crafts. This economic connection predated the raids on Seville. One striking artifact, a silver ring inscribed in Arabic with "For Allah," was found in a Viking grave in Sweden. Was it loot or a traded treasure? Either way, it shows contact went beyond war. The Vikings valued the artistry of distant cultures, even if they didn't understand the meaning. The sword and the coin were two sides of the same ambition, to profit from the wider world. Even as some Vikings burned cities, others traded peacefully for silver and jewels. History, as always, was more complex than a single story. To understand the Magus, we turn to Ahmad ibn Fadlan, an Arab diplomat who met Viking traders along the Volga in the 10th century. His account is a rare, vivid window into Viking life. He described them as tall, tattooed, and shockingly unhygienic by his standards. Ibn Fadlan witnessed a Viking ship burial, including the ritual sacrifice of a slave girl, a scene he found barbaric, yet deeply meaningful to the Norse. He observed their worship of idols, their fatalism, and their reverence for warriors who died in battle. Loyalty, courage, and the pursuit of fame and wealth defined their values. Ibn Fadlan judged them harshly, but his writing reveals a complex culture behind the Magus label. Through his eyes, the Islamic world glimpsed the mindset of the very raiders who had terrorized Seville. The Vikings were not just barbarians, they were a people with their own beliefs and codes. Understanding them was the first step to confronting the threat. The sack of Seville forced Emir Abd al-Rahman II to act. He ordered the construction of a powerful navy and a major shipyard in Seville, transforming Al-Andalus into a naval power. Watchtowers lined the Atlantic coast, manned by lookouts who relayed warnings with smoke and fire signals. A permanent army and rapid response cavalry patrols were stationed to counter future raids. The Vikings' element of surprise was neutralized by this new defense network. When another Viking fleet attacked in 859, the emirate was ready. The watchtowers gave the alarm, the navy sailed out, and the Andalusi forces inflicted heavy losses. Raiders who landed were quickly met by cavalry and infantry. The 859 raid ended in disaster for the Vikings. The era of easy plunder in Al-Andalus was over. The emirate had adapted, turning a devastating shock into lasting strength. The dragon ships had changed Iberia forever. The lesson was clear: adapt or perish. The clash between Vikings and Al-Andalus was more than a series of raids. It was a turning point for both worlds. For Al-Andalus, it was a lesson in humility and adaptation. For the Vikings, a new frontier and legend. The encounter was not just violent, but economic and cultural. Arabic coins and inscribed rings tell of deeper connections. The story of the Magus in Spain is a timeless lesson. Understanding your adversary is key to survival. The Emirates' initial failure was a failure of imagination. Their success came from learning and adapting. The dragon ships forced Córdoba to become a naval power, shaping Mediterranean history. For the Vikings, it was another chapter in their extraordinary expansion. This forgotten clash reminds us, history is driven by the shocks of the unexpected. Survival belongs to those who learn and adapt. In the end, both worlds were changed, by fire, by steel, and by the lessons of the unknown.